As I'm sure you can tell from my hair, it's been a minute, but this video has been a long time coming. It's time for me to make a Facebook finds video on someone who's always been there in the background, someone who has been there during home finding services, who at one point vanished completely from the face of the website, but returned with a vengeance. I'm of course talking about Big Dave and his Arcane Oddities removal service. And there's a lot to talk about. Luckily for me, Big Dave's assistant has written up the entire history of Big Dave. So, I'm gonna go through it with you, and there will be pictorial accompaniments appearing on the screen throughout. Let's get started. Business was founded by Mr. Big Dave after witnessing his cider turn into a malformed creature of pure strongbow before his eyes. He destroyed the entity after it took the life of another patron. Since then, he has run the business with the goal of protecting the public and removing any oddities or anomalies that cause trouble for the everyday man. Due to his private business's nature, it attracted the attention of the local council, whom from this point was working against the business and Mr. Big Dave. Though this may seem strange, it was later uncovered that the real reason behind their opposition was not due to the squatting. Sometime later, he discovers the abandoned bingo building. Quickly after finding it, he discovers it is located within a temporal anomaly, meaning entities in this world, through anomalous means, can be contained there so long as the right procedures and conditions are met. Almost as soon as he chooses this location, he finds the first two members of his team. The first, the assistant, is a woman he hired from a local call center to handle administration and calls to the business. The second was Phil, a sentient dolphin that inhabited the flooded basement of the bingo. Mr. Big Dave goes on one of his first calls under the business name, in which he had to remove a large, now sentient frog from an old woman's drainage pipes. The frog, Emperor Chug as he later became known, was contained within the bingo and began radicalizing the frogs of the basement and forming an army known as the Ribbit Men. During this time, Mr. Big Dave discovered an old fridge inside the bingo containing a sentient milk carton named Bulk. Bulk was then put on security, monitoring the doors and cameras of the bingo as well as the speaker system. The Ribbit Men, seeking full control of the basement, went to war with Phil, due to Phil paying rent to Mr. Big Dave. Mr. Big Dave chose to help Phil. The war was short but brutal, and after underestimating the Ribbit Men, Phil fled deeper into the basement and Mr. Big Dave was forced into a fighting retreat up into the upper levels of the bingo. The assistant and Bulk hid inside the security room and locked up, but at the time were assumed dead or captured. After being injured and forced into the attic, Mr. Big Dave discovers a population of raccoons living within the upper levels. The coons, as they came to be known, were led by a king, Bob. The two negotiated and came to an alliance. With this new force of coons, they retook the bingo in a brutal and savage battle which saw the Ribbit Men decisively defeated. Upon finding all members of the team alive, Mr. Big Dave tied the captured tug to a balloon and left him to float far from Liverpool with his army decimated. Business continued as normal, but the team began to encounter many third dimension entities known as gimps to the team. At this time, little was known about them, yet they were hostile to the business. Later on, Phil had found a wife and thus moved out. As such, the basement was drained and turned into a prison to contain the entities and oddities they would remove. Over time, new team members were introduced. Gorgle, Mr. Big Dave's assistant in the field, Shod, Mr. Big Dave's loyal dog companion, whom had swallowed the stone of the eternal void. Dragon, a large lizard entity captured by Mr. Big Dave and contained in the basement. At this time, he was not a member. His species was completely wiped out by the SCP Foundation, leaving him the only survivor. Bimya, a mentally challenged reptile creature, seemingly a failed mutation of the dragon by the SCP facility, that thought Mr. Big Dave was its father and was kept as a janitor. A dog-like entity they captured and contained in the basement, which was able to completely mutate and deform its body. At this time, he was not a member. The assistant's cat, a strange deformed cat that seemed to be able to minorly morph its body. As time went on and oddities were removed, this attracted the ire of an entity far beyond what the team had dealt with before. The Gimps were creatures made in the image and by their overlord, a fourth dimension primordial entity by the name of Abuhari. Abuhari's aims are to destroy all level of dimensional barriers, ushering in his reign over all dimensions in a single chaotic dimension. Inevitably, Abuhari invaded the bingo with an overwhelming force of Gimps along with his primordial demigod abilities. The team was no match, and for a time the business was lost and the team disbanded, with only Mr. Big Dave and Shod keeping true to the business and working from the company truck. This point in time was difficult for the two, but Mr. Big Dave was steadfast in his mission and Shod in his loyalty to Mr. Big Dave. They worked on minor removal jobs for a time until eventually they wished to finally retake the bingo and contain Abuhari within it. They reached out and found Bulk, but were unable to find the rest of the team. They did, however, rediscover King Bob and his coons living in exile. They too wished to retake their homes, so joined forces with the business and were officially added to the team. With all set, they went to retake the bingo. They assaulted the bingo with their forces of coons, but soon realized they were losing a battle similar to the war against the Ribbit Men. Shod, Mr. Big Dave, and King Bob were forced into the attic, their army decimated. Lacking options, Mr. Big Dave snuck into the lower levels of the basement and released from containment, who went on to wreak havoc against Abuhari's forces. With a renewed attack by the Coon reinforcements to accompany this, Mr. Big Dave traveled into the depths of the basements, seeking Abuhari. To his horror, he discovered Abuhari had captured Google as well as Shod in the fighting. After realizing Abuhari's weakness was insults, Mr. Big Dave was able to force him into a corner, where he was insulted non-stop, allowing Mr. Big Dave to release Shod and Google. With Abuhari captured and contained within a small dimensional tear within the bingo, the Gimps fled, and the bingo was won. Things returned to normal, with all the team returning, apart from Phil, and being made an official member of the team. Dragon breached containment at some point, but seemed only to target the council, which interested Mr. Big Dave. Dragon seemed to have a deep hatred for the council, which made him a natural ally of the business. Dragon seemed to understand this, and thus became a loyal member of the business, feeding on council workers that were thrown into his pit when they came to evict Mr. Big Dave from bingo. Sadly, business began to slow down, and one by one the members left to find better work. The council used this opportunity to send forces to forcefully evict Mr. Big Dave. Mr. Big Dave smashed a dimensional shard to destroy the forces, but this destroyed the company computer, and the page was shut down by the council. Mr. Big Dave, exhausted and not seeing any more business, and only trouble from the council, officially closed the business. He remained as a squatter within the bingo, yet was left alone by the council. This was strange, as the stated purpose seemed to be removing him from the bingo, as he was unlawfully operating and living there. The only other person who remained was Dragon, who enjoyed the basements of the bingo and living with Mr. Big Dave. It didn't help Dragon feared being hunted and killed like the rest of his kind. One day, Mr. Big Dave was expanding the bingo by digging tunnels to give Dragon more space, and accidentally collapsed the floor of the nearby walk-in center. The pensioners who fell in became feral, cannibalistic creatures of the dark caves, feeding on rats and surviving council workers whom had formed their own faction in the caves. This led to a short conflict with Dragon, who asserted his dominance in the caves, and no more fighting took place. After being arrested for this, Mr. Big Dave somehow escaped by unknown means. Discovering the council had accidentally released all entities and objects contained in the basement, including Abu Hari. With Dragon, Mr. Big Dave restarted the business. That, at the time, was the history of the business. The rest is up on our business page. Please tell Mr. Big Dave to send some food down to the... And that is the story of Mr. Big Dave. I did ask some additional questions, and let's get into those. I asked, how did you go from the strongbow creature to creating a business? Well, it's just one of those things. You fix it, someone else wants theirs fixing, and you make a business out of it. You call the Gimps third dimension entities. Does this mean that you do not exist in the third dimension? No, we are dimension 0. There are 4 other dimensions outside of our own that I know of. What can you tell me and my viewers about the Council? The Council for a long time was just a pain. They insisted the issue was us squatting in the old bingo, but thanks to the recent team member Changatang, we discovered the real reason was that they were working for something called the SCP Foundation. What experience have you had with the SCP Foundation other than what is mentioned in history, but that your assistant provided? Well, we've had a raid organized against us by something called the NTF. I'm told they were working for them. They tried to enter through the shit chute of Dragon's cave, but of course Dragon is territorial by nature, and it didn't help that he knew and hated the SCP Foundation. Also, we've had some of their agents follow us. I am a businessman, not a monster. Even their presence can cause discomfort. We can only fear what consuming their foul flesh would result in. And I asked him if he would be okay with me putting this video up on YouTube, and he asked, what is YouTube? I'm going to take that as a yes. I also said, I'm sorry for the loss of Bulk, who died between the history being made and these questions. Big Dave replied, he will be avenged along with Bimya. If needs be, I can provide pictures of the things discussed, and those are the pictures you've been seeing this entire time. But the thing is, that's not all. Ever since these questions and history were given, big things have happened. Abu Hari is gone. The bingo decimated once again, and more. But I'm not going to tell you it. You should go to Big Dave's page and find out for yourself. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on Big Dave, and I hope to collaborate with Big Dave even more in the future. I'm sorry I haven't been making regular videos recently. I've been quite distracted with other things going on around my life. But please feel free to subscribe to the channel. My schedule should be returning to something of normality soon, especially with the upcoming release of Marshwood Springs Oddity Society's proof of concept and pilot. Please subscribe so you can see that when it comes out. I've spent a very long time making it, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.